some noise and constellations data. Anytime it starts raining in California, some noise starts to build.
They're going to put out a release, a readjustment of guidance.
Yeah,
It rained in California, so good
I,
call, Jordan. You're
I
like, I'm
don't
not
doubt it.
joking. That's funny. Well, no, I just keep thinking of Final Destination because we escaped the Texas weather by being in California last week, right? San
Yeah,
Diego was like the one place that where it wasn't terrible weather. And now we escaped San Diego flooding. So
I
it's
know.
coming for us, Jordan.
I know. I mean, luckily we've just been dealing with the rain, but it hasn't been that cold.
No.
So we
Yeah.
we dodged the cold. Now we're just dealing with some rain. We'll see how New Orleans is next week.
Oh, yes. Yes, your editors will be on the ground at Samcom, decked out with some ridiculous attire to
Yeah,
take you behind the scenes.
some Spuds McKinsey gear.
Talk to our people. Well, look, right on time at 10 a.m. Let's let some of our neither of these are the people that we're talking to, but that's okay. We're all about who are these people? Maybe they'll put something interesting on our screen. There we go. There's Lauren. Welcome. Let me give you guys an official BeerNet Radio introduction. So today on BeerNet Radio, we have Lauren Price, head of the Sam Adams brand, and Eryn Bottens, who senior manager of brewing R&D, part of the team who drove the ideation of Just the Haze, which is basically what we're here to talk about, right? It's dry January, of course. Although tell that to my family. We did not really participate this year, but still a huge phenomenon, right? And while non-alc is still a very small part of beer, it's definitely driving the trends. And Jordan covered from the BWC report last week that I think, Jay, more than a quarter of the top 25 growth brands in craft last year were non-alc, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I think
Just the
Gold
Haze was
Rush
in there.
was,
Yeah.
oh yeah, at least one or two of those was in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me start with a foundational question. How important is non-alc to Boston beer? Because when you guys had your fall distributor meeting, it certainly seemed like a top priority for the beer portfolio.
That's true. So non-alc not only is a big priority for Boston Beer, but it's a key priority for the Sam Adams brand.
Mhm.
We're focusing a ton of our resources in the non-alc category to help support the growth that we're seeing with consumers. We are doing more marketing, more sampling, more just talking about non-alc than we ever have before. So it is a critical component of this year's plan.
Cool, cool. And so dovetailing with that, and also at this wholesaler meeting that we were privy to last fall, I think you guys mentioned a goal of 1.5 million cases of Just the Haze by the end of next year. Curious how you guys are going to get there, and if you can share where you are now.
Yeah, we are well on our way to that goal. We feel very confident that we can make it given the growth within the non-alc category and how our consumers are responding to Just the Haze. We're leading our non-alc efforts with Just the Haze as our primary beer, as we know that this is the best tasting non-alcoholic beer in America, as substantiated by the gold medal we won at the Great American Beer Fest. That said, this 1.5 million case goal is lofty, but again, we feel like we can get there. So what we're really trying to do is just get the word out about Just the Haze, arm our sales teams with the appropriate selling materials so that they can do their part and get distribution in stores, and then continue to ideate on innovation and other unconventional sampling tactics, etc. Really just to keep the steam rolling on this one because we have something special here, as does the whole category.
Right, right.
And going back to the ideation of Just the Haze, was there ever any thought to line extending and coming out with a dealcoholized version of your flagship like many have? Why was it important to create a whole new brand for this space?
Just as we have something special with Just the Haze, we also do with Boston Lager. That is the flagship and the pride of our portfolio. And we knew that if we couldn't get it exactly right, we didn't even want to try. So Eryn, I'm not sure if you have any context also from that time period, but that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of it for us is that Boston Lager, it has a very specific flavor profile to it. And it's like NA isn't easy to make, at least to make it well into like what our standards of an NA should be. And to try to do that out the gate with Boston Lager, I think would have been a much more lengthy development process. Plus, like we knew that IPAs were a big part of the market at that time. Like hazies are still a big part of beer, and to help draw drinkers in who drink hazy New England IPAs, juicy IPAs, like that kind of style. We thought that this might be the best way to approach it and just get our name out there as far as an NA brewer.
Yeah. And so now that you've found success with just the haze, is that where you're putting all your focus in? Or are you still thinking about maybe, tinkering with de-alcoholized versions of other Sam Adams brands?
This year, we're putting a ton of eggs in the Just the Haze basket again because we believe that we're onto something really special there. That said, we never say no to innovation. We do have a second style out there already, Gold Rush, that's doing fairly well also. But we're constantly looking at consumer trends to see where we can pair what consumers are wanting to drink with what's feasible and possible within the non-alcoholic space.
I guess you guys are siloed a little bit, but to your point about what consumers want to drink in the non-alc space, what if that's not a beer per se? Would your team work on it, or how do you guys handle that?
Well, if it's beer, yeah, beer we'll definitely be working on. But we're always a part of anything that runs through our production breweries. So, if it's like, I don't know, I guess for instance, like a hop tea, like
Yeah.
as an alternative, right? We have groups outside of the Sam Adams group that would be working on that, but we would most likely help because it's involving hops, it's different ingredients, you still need a brewer's perspective on that.
Right. Right. Or what about like a truly NA?
Seltzer water.
Yes, a seltzer water, an seltzer, non-dealcoholized seltzer. Are you guys doing that?
You're asking the wrong crew.
Yeah.
We're all out here in this team.
Got it. No, that's fair. Well, let me back up a little bit. And, obviously it's dry January. Are there any benchmarks you guys can share for how your non-alc brands are performing this dry January? Because I know there's been some talk that it's fizzling out a bit, but of course, I think non-alc has caught on more in general for every month. So how is that performing, and what are your thoughts there?
Well, you are right that we do focus on dry January, but dry January is turning into dry February, dry March, dry April. So we've seen a fast start to this year's dry January. We've increased the number of pods that we've had on both Just the Haze and Gold Rush. And we also have a lot of fun activations that are happening in markets specific to dry January, or I should say stemming this month. So for example, we have a sampling challenge called the non-alc challenge, where we are going into stores and we are challenging drinkers to do a blind taste test between 4 different samples, 1 being non-alc, 3 being full alc, and seeing who can get it right, who can guess which one's non-alc. And just a spoiler alert, not many people are getting it correct. So that said, that then is, of course, leading to more trial and et cetera. But yeah, in terms of dry January, off to a fast start with incremental points of distribution, as well as seeing a lot of success with displays that perhaps it might be a little bit harder to sell in other parts of the year. Although it shouldn't be, because non-alc is a totally a year-round SKU.
Yeah. Do those tend to be sticky, or do they tend to go away, like the incremental displays and that sort of thing? Do they tend to go away completely after dry January?
They tend to be pulsed in where we see the natural consumption of NA. So dry January for sure is a key moment, but also summer is really big, as well as at the end of the year with holidays. I think a lot of people who are hosting look for non-alc options to make sure everyone at their party has what they want. So we do see key peaks throughout the year. But that said, it's throughout the year and it is fairly regular.
Right,
Gotcha.
right. And then just one more for me, because I know Jordan has a lot too. Spring resets, talking about parts of the year, right? Is there anything you can share about what's happening with Gold Rush and Just the Haze for spring resets?
Yes, so we're in the middle of our planning process right now, where we're locking down, where our incremental distribution is coming from. One key growth source we're seeing, though, is actually the West Coast. So traditionally, Sam Adams does really well in New England and Atlantic and kind of on the coastal eastern seaboard of the United States. But we're seeing and expecting a lot of growth coming out of California and Oregon and Washington, and areas that are, high category indexes, but not necessarily high in brand indices. So that's where we're expecting a lot of our growth, as well as continued support and incrementality in our core home markets.
Well, Jen was talking about stickiness earlier, and I was wondering, do you see any loyalty starting to take shape? And if so, when do you start to see it? Because over dry January, it seems like everyone's like, "Oh, you got to try this one. Oh, you haven't tried this. This is the best. This is no good." And it's kind of this huge sampling of everyone kind of sharing brands that they like or they want other people to try. So, do you see loyalty starting to build, and when does it kind of start to catch on?
When we look at the alc bev space and the non-alc space, we know that drinkers are promiscuous, actually. So there's a ton of switching that's happening. And while we are still getting trial, and we certainly have a solid fan base of Just the Haze loyalists, we actually do see people, to your point, switching between different brands. So they're going from our competitors to us, to back to full alcohol, for example. I think it's a little early for us to have firm, you know, loyalty and strong repeat numbers, although we know that that is happening.
Yeah.
So leaving that one a little bit more broad, but everybody is drinking everything, both in non-alc and in full alc.
And do you see in broadly, like in any research or data, that this is a space where people share a bunch? It seems like people go to parties and take non-alc and say, here's an array of brands that I have. Try it. Kind of like craft beer back in the day and wine.
Well, it's very funny you mentioned that, because I would have had a totally different answer a year ago than I do today. I think a year ago, when we look at this space, we would have never considered things like a non-alc variety pack, for example, because when we traditionally think about variety packs, it's all about bringing your favorite, slew of products and being able to promote them to your friends and family, pass them out, try this, try that, etc. And up until recently, I would say there's been not so much a stigma around non-alc, but people kept it more as a me purchase, just for you. And that is totally changing. So now when we talk to consumers, they are far better at promoting the category, promoting the benefits of it, bringing it to parties, etc. So word of mouth, and this idea of promotion of non-alc, now the tides are changing, and it's definitely shifting in that direction.
Gotcha. And then one more from me, and I'll kick it back over to Jen. But another kind of research question. Do you have any insights on how velocity compares to regular beer? How much more quickly or slowly do consumers deplete like a six pack of Just the Haze versus, a typical Sam Adams beer brand?
I would need to get back to you on that exact number. I do know that it's a little bit slower than our full alc brands, but I also think that's just because of the number of people in the category and who's buying it, and it's always for different occasions. So I would need to get back to you on that. I'm not entirely sure.
I
Yeah.
understand that that's kind of a
Yeah.
a tough one to nail down. I was just
Yeah.
curious. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, Lauren, a second ago, you mentioned how consumers are sharing it more and that it's really kind of it's coming from them right now, variety packs and that sort of thing. When do you think we will see non-alc, if it's going to really take off, like reach critical mass here in the US? Like, seltzer kind of, treaded along for a couple of years and then it exploded. Now, we don't know if it would have exploded the way it did if COVID hadn't happened, but what's your best guess, either of you really, for when that could happen with non-alc, if it's going to happen?
I think the rocket fuel is being launched and poured and launched, or excuse me, poured and lit right now. We are at the beginning stages of that. While non-alc beer, speaking beer specifically, is still less than 1% of the overall total bill category, we're seeing that within the next 5 years, that could grow to 3%, which again, when thinking about the total beer category, is just a massive number. Non-alc beer is actually bigger than cider now, which is just for point of reference, so it's happening right now. So depending on what the goal or percentage of total beer we're trying to get to is, would determine the time frame, but we are well on the way.
Right. And I'm sure you guys want to be number one, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't circle back and just straight out ask, are you guys looking at like a hop tea or a hop water?
I mean, I would just say never say no. Like,
Yeah.
like that's the point of what we do here is research and development, and we explore new categories all the time. Whether or not they will make their way out to market is a totally different question.
Right.
But it's not off the table.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense. How about, guys, how important is the on-premise to your non-alc brands and the health of the non-alc category?
It's really important, actually, and we're investing more in on-premise than we have in the last few years that we've had specifically just the Haze. Right now, it's pretty much dominated by package. So we have 12-ounce cans, and we've recently come out with 16-ounce cans as well for other event types and venues. But we are starting to drive this more. You're seeing more and more restaurants and bars have fully dedicated non-alc sections on the menu. That's where we want to be. We want to make sure that people aren't missing out on the typical drinking occasions just because they're deciding not to drink that day. Or the other option is we see a lot of times people are using non-alc beers as a pacer beer. So you start with full alc and you switch, kind of pace back and forth between the two. We want to make sure that people have that option, and we think it's important that they do. Extending the amount of fun, making sure they're feeling included in events, and taking really advantage of the full restaurant and brewery and bar experience as they would if they were drinking traditional full alc.
And you guys aren't doing any draft pilots or anything like that, are you? Or
we would love to figure out a way to make draft work. We have nothing that we can share yet, but I do see that would be an opportunity in the future if we could figure it out.
Yeah. I'd love to try some draft NA. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would too.
Yeah. Jay, anything? Sorry.
Yeah, I think, we were kind of talking about this earlier. Obviously, dry January is a big a push in marketing and media, and then you mentioned summer. Is summer the next biggest push? And then like where are the other kind of, because you hear about Sober October and you hear about these other type of sober challenges that it seems like there's a new one every year. So where do you kind of figure out your marketing plan after dry January ends?
Well, really, with that question, there's two consumer groups to focus on. If we're looking at the sober or sober curious community, we would focus more on dry January, sober October, maybe those holiday parties that I talked about. But for drinkers who are drinking NA throughout the entirety of the year, it's always on. There's always a baseline where we believe that we can push it. So summer is big, particularly with just the Haze. It's a full-bodied IPA, but it's got some fruit notes to it, and so it plays well in those warmer summer months. So we definitely see a peak then. One thing that's a different, though, between previous years and this year is we actually are promoting non-alc for all 12 months this year. We have a brand new Sam Adams equity campaign that's coming out that's inclusive of TV commercials, brand new TV commercials featuring Your Cousin from Boston, digital ads, etc. Essentially around this idea of it's Sam season, meaning any season throughout the entire year, or AKA, any occasion, there's a Sam for that. And non-alc is a critical piece of that campaign this year. So heavy investment throughout the entire year, both on TV, digital, social, radio, all over, with this idea that it's always the perfect time for a non-alc.
Is that non-alc specific, or am I hearing that it has all the Sam Adams brands and includes the non-alc brands?
Well, we do have one variety spot that would be equity for the entire brand, but we have dedicated now NA assets. So you will see non-alc TV commercials for the first time from us. Well, I shouldn't say it's the first time, but much, much more substantial media buys behind them.
Have they started, or when do they start?
We're actually filming next week. So they're going to start in Q2 of this year. So beginning of March throughout to the end of the year. And then actually we're expecting that these spots will carry us for the next 2 to 3 years. So you'll begin seeing them soon.
Nice. That's exciting. That's a big deal. Just one more from me, going back to that distributor meeting. I think you guys had said that you're encouraging retailers to merchandise non-alc with non-alc versus with other beer. What's the thought behind that? How much of the non-alc space is currently, merchandised like that? What can you share there?
Yeah. So actually some retailers, and this, I guess you could say, makes it easy for us, mandate that non-alc goes within the non-alc set. We believe that actually is a strong idea, though, because people see the non-alc set as a destination now. So whereas if you just have 1 or 2 SKUs like Sam Adams does, they may get lost in the total craft shelf. There is a destination where people have the non-alc occasions in mind, they're going straight to it. So for us, it's easier to think about, easier to find, easier to detect on shelf, etc. And one way that we're actually linking the non-alc set back to our space where we have all of the rest of our Sam Adams is through a packaging refresh that's happening this year. So we're pulling in the visuals that we have on the Just the Haze and Gold Rush packagings in a little bit closer to the parent brand, so people can easily link and know when they're purchasing a quality beer from Sam Adams.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Cool.
And
Let's
then,
see.
one more on Gold Rush, because we were talking about the bumps year in review for craft at the beginning. And I think Gold Rush was the only new non-alc innovation to make the top 25. So seeing that success, how often do you want to innovate and extend with the Just the Haze, line of non-alc beers, knowing that you can put out a winner, but you also don't want to put out too much, I guess. So kind of walk me through your thinking there.
Yeah, and that's the crux of the problem is we want to make sure that we're offering non-alc drinkers options and variety, but we want this to be incremental. Just the Haze and Gold Rush are two complementary styles that play really well to each other, next to each other. And so we want to make sure that whatever comes next in our portfolio is incremental. So a different style, perhaps it's something that offers a caloric or nutritional difference or benefit, etc. So until we really nail what that is, we're going to focus on Just the Haze and Gold Rush. But again, as you heard Eryn said, we're not saying no to anything. And when we have something that meets our very high taste expectations and standards, and it's non-alc, we'll be sure to launch it.
Well, what else? Is there anything else that we didn't ask that's super pertinent? Because I think that was fascinating, and I thank you guys for your time.
Yeah. One other thing I think is a kind of a fun story or something that's been happening this month and as part of our Dry January campaign is we've had a really fun PR play going on called Due Date Brew Date. And essentially what the premise of this is, there's an insight that only 17% of partners, so either husbands or non-carrying mothers of pregnant mothers, actually abstain from alcohol during the 9 months when the mother is pregnant. And
rude.
I know.
So
Guilty.
Rude. This is the first stage of teamwork and getting through it. So we basically created this program where drinkers could go to our Instagram page and find our brew date, due date posts and enter either themselves as a supporting partner, or we had mothers volunteering their partners to join. Anyway, so long story short, we have been giving out 9 months free supply of Just the Haze to these couples to help them sustain through that time, as well as gifts from their baby registry. And at the end of the 9 months, when they hit their due date, we'll switch them back over and give them free Boston Lager.
Nice.
So again, it's just one fun way to think about all of the incremental occasions and times when a non-alc beer is wanted by drinkers.
Right.
We've seen a lot of success.
That makes sense. Where was that 6 years ago, 8 years ago when I was pregnant?
I know.
I know.
I could have done it maybe had that been the case.
Maybe
it's time for another one for you too. I'm not sure.
Well, you know what? I think you're right, Lauren.
All right. I know.
What am I saying?
Exactly.
Well, on that note, thank you guys again. Fantastic. And please do keep us posted. We love to see when those spots hit too. So let us know about that. But well, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your Dry January.
Thanks a lot. Great to see you.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.